They told you to step aside and let the younger generation lead. They convinced you your season is over. But what they don't know, what they fear most, is that God saves his most dangerous assignments for those who've already been through hell and learned to carry heaven's fire. You see it in their eyes when you speak up in meetings, that patronizing smile that says, "That's nice, but we need fresh perspective." You feel it in church when they celebrate the young adults ministry, while your decades of wisdom gather dust in empty Sunday school rooms. You've watched a culture obsessed with youth systematically erase the very voices that carry the depth their shallow generation desperately needs. But tonight that ends, because what they see as your disqualification, heaven sees as your divine credentials. What they label as outdated, God calls authenticated. What they dismiss as irrelevant, the kingdom recognizes as irreplaceable. Your scars aren't evidence of your defeat. They're proof of your qualification. I know because I've sat exactly where you're sitting. I've felt the weight of being overlooked, undervalued, written off by a world that mistakes volume for authority and confuses energy with anointing. I've whispered the same desperate question you whisper in the 3 a.m. darkness. God, did I miss my moment? Is there anything left of me worth using? And in that sacred aftermath, that hallowed ground where something holy died, I discovered something that revolutionized everything I thought I knew about God's timing, his purposes, and his plans for the overlooked. The ashes you're sitting in aren't your grave. They're your altar. Every tear you've cried over dreams that died, every prayer you've whispered over promises that seemed to expire, every moment you've felt invisible in a world that celebrates the scene, all of it has been collected in heaven's bottle, stored as sacred evidence of a soul being prepared for something far greater than temporary recognition. Your pain has been pregnant with purpose all along. Think about Joseph, 17 years old when he received his dreams of destiny, but it took 13 years of slavery and imprisonment before he stood before Pharaoh. 13 years of being forgotten, overlooked, dismissed. But when the moment came, when Egypt faced famine and needed someone who understood both suffering and sovereignty, they didn't call for the young dreamers. They called for the one whose dreams had been forged in the furnace. Your furnace is almost finished. Consider Job. Prosperity to poverty, health to sickness, honor to humiliation. Sitting in ashes, scraping his sores with broken pottery, while younger voices offered shallow explanations for mysterious pain. But when God finally spoke, when restoration came, Scripture says his latter days were greater than his former. Not because his youth was restored, but because his depth had been established. Your latter days are about to eclipse your former. Think about David. Anointed as a teenager, but he didn't touch the throne for 15 years. 15 years of running, hiding, living in caves, while a younger generation questioned his relevance. But when he finally stepped into his calling, he brought the wisdom of wilderness, the authority of testing the perspective that only comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. Your wilderness has been your university. Right now, place your hand over your heart, not as meditation, but as covenant touch. Feel that rhythm that's not just blood pumping through aging veins. That's your spirit keeping time with heaven's eternal metronome, maintaining the same frequency it carried when God first whispered your name in the council chambers of eternity. Breathe deep. Receive divine breath. Let your lungs fill not just with oxygen, but with the same wind that moved over the waters in Genesis. The the same spirit that raised Christ from the tomb, the same breath that turned disciples from cowards into conquerors. Now, in the deepest part of your chest, beneath the disappointment of delayed dreams, underneath the regret of roads not taken past, the place where hope learned to hide, feel for it. That warmth, faint but undeniable. A single ember that refused to surrender to the storm. This is your archaeology of the soul moment. You thought you were broken beyond repair, but what if every scar etched across your spirit is actually a divine signature? What if your greatest wound, the one you hide from everyone, even yourself, is about to become your most powerful weapon? Let me tell you about Martha, 67 years old, sitting in her living room 3 years after her husband's suicide. For 3 winters, she'd stared at their cold fireplace, unable to light it, unable to feel warmth anywhere in her world. The ashes of their dreams, their future, their 40-year love story scattered like dust through her trembling fingers. But on one ordinary Tuesday morning, as she placed her arthritic hands over those cold stones, she felt something impossible. Warmth. Not physical heat, something deeper. The first stirring of a purpose she thought had died with him. That ember became a suicide prevention ministry that has now saved over 400 families from the darkness she almost surrendered to. Her deepest wound became her divine weapon. Her sacred scar became the very place where heaven's light broke through. Her age wasn't her disqualification, it was her authority. Her pain wasn't her prison, it was her platform. Her scars weren't her shame, they were her specialty. And God whispered to my spirit, tell them that I collect the ashes of their dreams, not to mock their pain, but to show them what resurrection looks like when it blooms from the soil of surrender. You've been hiding from your own power, apologizing for taking up space, accepting scraps when you were designed for the feast, playing small when the very galaxies are groaning for your gifts to be revealed, whispering when heaven has trained your voice to roar. But tonight, this exact moment, something shifts. Can you feel it, that sacred stirring in your chest? That's not anxiety about your age or fear about time running out. That's recognition. Your spirit standing up and saluting as it remembers its original rank in God's kingdom. The enemy has whispered lies over your timeline, convinced you that your season has passed, that your dreams have an expiration date, that your scars disqualify you from significance. But I need you to understand something that will revolutionize how you see every gray hair, every line on your face, every season you thought made you irrelevant. You are not past your prime. You are entering your sacred prime. The fire that's about to ignite in your spirit doesn't burn away your years, it sanctifies them. Every disappointment becomes fuel. Every betrayal becomes a building block. Every night you cried yourself to sleep becomes the very darkness from which your light will shine brightest. This is your resurrection tension moment, that sacred space between crucifixion and Easter morning. You feel the trembling hope that maybe, just maybe, your greatest chapter isn't behind you but ahead of you. And you're right. But first, I need you to do something that requires more courage than you think you have. I need you to identify your sacred scar, the wound you're most ashamed of that God wants to transform into your greatest weapon. What wound are you hiding that heaven wants to heal into a weapon? Speak it, not out loud if you can't, but let your spirit name it, because what you're about to discover will transform that scar from a source of shame into a badge of honor. Let me guide you through the 5 sacred touches, the ritual that will become the foundation of your entire transformation. Touch your forehead and whisper, I remember who God called me to be. Touch your heart and declare, I receive my divine purpose. Touch your hands and I accept my kingdom assignment. Touch your feet and commit, I will walk in my calling. Touch your lips and covenant, I will speak life into my generation. Do you feel it, that warmth spreading through your chest? That's not emotion, that's divine archaeology. God excavating buried treasures from the ruins of your disappointment. That's resurrection flame burning away everything except what's eternal. In the comments below, if your spirit recognizes its name being called from these ashes, declare, not type, not share, but declare, with the authority of someone whose ashes are about to burst into flame. I receive my resurrection fire. This isn't social media interaction. This is your soul signing a contract with destiny. This is spiritual warfare disguised as a comment. When you type those words, you're not engaging with content, you're engaging with eternity. Because what I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes will make every other spiritual voice you've ever heard sound like echoes from empty sanctuaries. What you're going to discover about your divine assignment will make you understand why every door had to close, why every relationship had to end, why every dream had to die. You weren't just surviving, you were being authenticated. You weren't just enduring, you were being refined. You weren't just broken, you were being broken open so that the light inside you could finally break through. What if every scar on your soul is actually a divine signature proof that you survived what was meant to destroy you because you carry something hell fears and heaven celebrates? Your resurrection fire is calling your name. The question is, are you finally ready to stop apologizing for your scars and start wielding them as weapons? Your sacred prime begins now. You felt it, didn't you? That stirring when I spoke of resurrection fire. Your spirit recognizing something it had almost forgotten. But before that flame can fully ignite, there's something we must do together. Something no other voice has ever offered you. We must consecrate your wounds. I know what you're thinking. I've tried to heal. I've prayed. I've read books. I've even gone to therapy. But what I'm about to guide you through isn't healing as the world understands it. This is sacred archaeology, the holy excavation of treasures buried in your trauma. Place your hand on your heart again. Feel that rhythm. Now I want you to place your other hand wherever your deepest wound lives. Maybe it's your chest where betrayal carved its mark. Maybe it's your stomach where anxiety makes its home. Maybe it's your forehead where the weight of disappointment presses down. Feel both at once, your heartbeat and your wound. Life and pain coexisting in the same sacred space. This is what I call sacred scar cartography, mapping the geography of God's faithfulness through your wounds. Every scar on your soul marks a place where heaven met you in your darkest hour, where divine intervention kept you breathing when you wanted to stop. You see, the enemy convinced you that your scars disqualify you. But I need you to understand something that will revolutionize how you see every wound you carry. Your scars aren't evidence of your brokenness. They're proof of your qualification. Think about it. Jesus still carries his scars in heaven. Even in his glorified body, the nail prints remain, not as shame, but as trophies, not as weakness, but as weapons. Thomas had to touch those wounds to believe. Your wounds, too, will be the very places where others encounter the reality of resurrection. I carry 17 scars, some visible, some invisible. Each one taught me something about God's faithfulness that prosperity never could. the scar on my wrist from the night I almost ended everything. That's where I learned God's grip is stronger than my despair, the invisible scar from my father's rejection. That's where I discovered my Heavenly Father's unconditional acceptance. I'm not here as someone who avoided pain. I'm here as someone who learned to transform it into purpose. Now, let's begin your sacred scar cartography ritual. Take out a piece of paper. Don't use your phone. Don't type on a computer. This requires the physical act of writing the same way surgeons need physical tools for physical operations. We're performing spiritual surgery here. At the top of the page, write these words, "Divine geography of my faithfulness map." Now I want you to list 3 wounds that shaped you most. Don't think too hard. Your spirit knows which ones. Write them down not as failures, but as coordinates on the map of your survival. First wound, the betrayal that taught you the difference between human promises and divine faithfulness. Second wound, the loss that revealed your capacity to love deeper than you knew possible. Third wound, the rejection that forced you to find your identity in God's opinion, not people's approval. Next to each wound, I want you to write what survived in you that shouldn't have been able to survive. Because here's what trauma specialists and theologians both know. The human spirit has a divine architecture that can withstand pressures that would crush ordinary materials. What survived in you? Your compassion when you should have become bitter. Your faith when you should have become cynical. Your capacity to trust when you should have built walls. Your ability to love when you should have hardened your heart. These aren't accidents, they're miracles. They're proof that you carry something that hell fears and heaven celebrates. Now comes the sacred part. Place your hand over each wound as I speak over it. First wound. This wound is holy ground. Where I bled, God sowed seeds of purpose. Second wound. This scar is my spiritual credential. I am qualified for kingdom work because I have been through the fire and emerged carrying the flame. Third wound. This pain is my sacred inheritance. What was meant to destroy me has become the foundation of my testimony. Do you feel it? That warmth spreading through your chest. That's not emotion. That's divine suture. God stitching together the broken pieces of your story into a masterpiece that will heal generations. But we're not finished. There's one more part of this ritual that separates surface healing from sacred transformation. I want you to write a letter, not to the person who hurt you, not to God asking why it happened. I want you to write a letter to your wound, to thank it for what it taught you, to honor it for what it protected, to celebrate it for what it birthed. Start with these words. Dear sacred wound, because of you, I know. Because of your betrayal wound, you know the difference between human love and divine love. Because of your loss wound, you know how to hold hope and grief in the same hand. Because of your rejection wound, you know your worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. Write for as long as your spirit needs to write. Let the gratitude flow. Let the recognition dawn. Let the sacred archaeology uncover treasures you didn't know were buried in your pain. When you're finished, read it aloud. Speak it with the authority of someone who has been to hell and back and lived to tell about it. Speak it with the voice of a sacred survivor who knows that their scars are not their shame, they're their strength. This is what I learned sitting by Martha's bedside in the hospital, 3 years after her husband's suicide, 1 year into her ministry. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, "I used to think my pain was proof that God had forgotten me. Now I know my pain was proof that God was preparing me for something greater than I could imagine. Her wound became her weapon. Her scar became her specialty. Her pain became her platform. And yours will too. In the comments below, I want you to share just one word, not a sentence, not an explanation, just one word that describes what survived in you that shouldn't have been able to survive. Faith, love, hope, compassion, joy, whatever it is, type it. Let it be your declaration that you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a victor through Christ. But here's what will happen when you complete this sacred scar cartography. You'll start seeing your wounds differently. You'll stop hiding your scars and start honoring them. You'll stop apologizing for your sensitivity and start celebrating your depth. Most importantly, you'll start recognizing other wounded healers. You'll see past their masks to their scars. You'll know instinctively who's been through the fire because you recognize the scent of someone else who's been refined by flames. This is how the sacred survivor circle forms, not through shared perfection, but through shared scars, not through healed wounds, but through consecrated ones. What if your deepest wound isn't your greatest shame, but your most sacred qualification? What if the very thing you've hidden from the world is the exact thing the world needs to see healed? Because tomorrow we're going to take this sacred scar cartography and turn it into something even more powerful. We're going to discover how your wounds become the very doorway through which your divine assignment enters the world. Your pain had a purpose, your scars tell a story, and your survival is about to become someone else's salvation. But first, honor what you've endured. Consecrate what you've carried. Celebrate what you've survived. You are not broken. You are not damaged goods. You are not too wounded to be used. You are a sacred survivor carrying divine credentials written in scar tissue and sealed by the blood of the Lamb. And your resurrection fire is just beginning to burn. You've honored your scars. You've mapped the sacred geography of your survival. But now comes the moment that separates those who simply heal from those who are reborn into their divine assignment. Tonight, you're not just going to feel better about your past. You're going to officially resign from it. What I'm about to guide you through isn't therapy. It's not affirmation. It's not positive thinking. This is a kingdom ordination ceremony, the same type of sacred installation that transformed shepherd boys into king's fishermen, into apostles, and broken women into world changers. You see, most spiritual content stops at healing. They help you feel better about your wounds, accept your story, find peace with your pain. But that's where amateurs end and where authentic ministry begins. Because healing without commissioning leaves you qualified but not activated, prepared but not installed, anointed but not appointed. I've conducted my own resurrection ceremony 3 times, once at 32, when I lost everything again at 47, when betrayal almost broke me, and once more at 51, when God called me to step into authority I didn't think I deserved. Each time I learned the same truth: transformation isn't something that happens to you. It's something you officiate for yourself. Tonight, I'm your commissioning officer, and you're about to become the ordained minister of your own resurrection. But first, let me ask you something. In preparation for your ordination ceremony, I want you to think about this. What is one word that describes the person heaven called you to become before the world told you who to be? Don't overthink it. Your spirit knows. Trust that first whisper. Hold that word. We're going to need it. Now, look around the space where you're sitting. In the next few minutes, we're going to transform this ordinary room into a sacred coronation chamber. Because here's what I've learned after 2 decades of walking people through divine transitions. The location doesn't make the ceremony sacred. Your obedience does. Stand up. Yes, right now. Feel your feet on the ground. This is the last time you'll stand here as the old version of yourself. Find a candle. Any candle. If you don't have one, even the flashlight on your phone will work. This isn't about perfection, it's about intention. Place it in front of you, but don't light it yet. Now, get a piece of paper and a pen. Again, not your phone, not your computer. This requires the ancient act of handwriting, the same way Moses received the commandments in stone, the same way kingdom covenants have always been written. Sit facing your unlit candle. Close your eyes for a moment and invite the Holy Spirit into this space, not as a ritual, but as reality. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead is about to preside over your resurrection. Now open your eyes and light the candle. As that flame springs to life, understand what you're witnessing. This isn't just fire. This is the presence of the God who appeared to Moses in the burning bush, who descended on Mount Sinai in flames, who sent tongues of fire at Pentecost. You are sitting in the presence of the sacred. Now, at the top of your paper, write these words: Resurrection Covenant between heaven and earth. Underneath that, write today's date. Not just any date, but the anniversary of your spiritual resurrection. Years from now, you'll remember this moment as the night everything changed. Now comes the sacred work. You're going to write a formal resignation from your victim identity and an official acceptance of your victor assignment. Start with these words, personalizing them with your own name. I, your name on this day of date, do officially resign from the identity that was shaped by my wounds and accept the identity that was designed by my Creator. Keep writing. Let your spirit guide the words, but here's the framework. I resign from believing that my age disqualifies me from my assignment. I accept that my years are evidence of my readiness. I resign from apologizing for taking up space. I accept that I was created to occupy territory in God's kingdom. I resign from hiding my gifts because others said I wasn't young enough, fresh enough, relevant enough. I accept that my experience is my expertise, my scars are my credentials, and my survival is my qualification. I resign from living small to make others comfortable. I accept the authority that comes with tested faith and proven faithfulness. Now write the word you identified earlier, the person heaven called you to become. Next to it, write this: I officially accept my commission as, maybe it's healer of the brokenhearted, maybe it's voice for the voiceless, maybe it's light in dark places. Trust what rises in your spirit. But we're not finished. Now comes the most powerful part of your ordination ceremony. Sign your name at the bottom. Not just a signature, but a covenant signature, the same way you'd sign a marriage certificate or a legal document. Because that's exactly what this is, a legal document in the spiritual realm, transferring authority from your old self to your new calling. Now read this covenant aloud, not whispered, not silent, declared with the authority of someone who has been through hell and emerged carrying heaven's fire. As you speak these words, understand what's happening in the invisible realm. Angels are repositioning as witnesses. Your name is being entered into heaven's registry. Demonic assignments against your identity are being legally canceled. You are being officially installed into your kingdom role. When you finish reading, place your hand on your forehead and say, "I receive divine perspective on my calling." Place your hand on your heart and say, "I accept the love that qualifies me for this assignment." Place your hand on your throat and say, "I will speak with the authority heaven has given me." Place your hands together and say, "I will build God's kingdom with these hands." Touch your feet and say, "I will walk in the path prepared for me before time began." Now stand up. You are no longer the same person who sat down to begin the ceremony. You carry different spiritual DNA. You operate under different authority. You walk with different purpose. Look at yourself in any reflective surface nearby. The face looking back at you belongs to someone who has been officially commissioned by heaven itself. Someone whose wounds are now credentials. Someone whose scars are now specialties. Someone whose survival is now their assignment. In the comments below, if you completed this ordination ceremony, if you wrote your covenant and spoke your installation oath, declare with the authority of someone who has just been officially commissioned, "I accept my kingdom commission." This isn't social media interaction. This is spiritual installation. When you type those words, you're not engaging with content, you're engaging with eternity. You're announcing to both heaven and hell that you are no longer available for victim identity. You now operate under victor authority. But here's what I need you to understand as you sit in the glow of your ordination candle. What just happened wasn't make-believe. It wasn't symbolic, it was sacramental. In the same way, baptism isn't just getting wet, but dying to the old self. In the same way, communion isn't just eating bread, but receiving Christ's body. What you just experienced was an actual transfer of spiritual authority. You now carry kingdom credentials that no rejection can revoke, no betrayal can cancel, no disappointment can disqualify. Your authority doesn't come from human approval, it comes from divine appointment. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, you won't just be someone who's healing from their past. You'll be someone who's been officially installed into their future. Your first thought won't be about what you lost, but about what you've been commissioned to build. And this is crucial. Your ordination comes with responsibility. Kingdom authority isn't just about what you receive, it's about what you release. You've been commissioned not just to heal, but to help heal others. Not just to rise, but to help others rise. Not just to find your voice, but to amplify voices that have been silenced. If heaven opened its archives tonight and showed you the person you were created to become before the world wounded you, would you have the courage to step into that identity? What if your resurrection isn't just about healing your past, but about claiming your eternal assignment? Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how this kingdom commission translates into daily authority, how your spiritual installation becomes practical activation, how your ordination ceremony tonight becomes your operating system tomorrow. Your resurrection fire is no longer just burning, it's blazing. And the world is about to see what happens when someone who has been officially commissioned by heaven steps into their assignment with the authority of tested faith and proven faithfulness. But first, sit with this moment. Let the reality of what just happened settle into your bones. You are no longer who you were when this journey began. You have been resurrected, reinstated, and reactivated. The old you just died. The new you just been born. And tomorrow we discover how this newborn spiritual authority changes everything about how you walk through the world. Your kingdom commission is official. Your authority is activated. and your assignment is about to be revealed. You just signed your spiritual emancipation proclamation. You felt the authority settle on your shoulders like a mantle you were always meant to wear. But now I need to tell you something that will change how you see not just your transformation, but your responsibility. You're not the only one. Right now, across this nation, across this world, there are others just like you. Others who have honored their scars, officiated their resurrection, and accepted their kingdom commission. Others who spent decades believing the lie that their season was over, only to discover they were being prepared for the most significant assignment of their lives. What's happening to you isn't random, it's prophetic. You are part of what I call the Exodus generation, those who have been called out of spiritual Egypt in this final hour. And just like Moses never intended to cross the Red Sea alone, your deliverance was never meant to be a solo journey. But here's what most don't understand about Exodus. It's not just about where you're going. It's about what you're leaving behind. And more importantly, it's about who follows when they see you walk away from what once enslaved you. Because every personal exodus creates a pathway for collective deliverance. Think about that for a moment. When Moses stretched his rod over the Red Sea, the waters didn't just part for him. They stayed open long enough for 2 million people to walk through on dry ground. When Joshua stepped into the Jordan River, the waters didn't just stop for his feet. They piled up in a heap while an entire generation crossed into their inheritance. Your breakthrough isn't just yours, it's a bridge. I have led my own exodus out of 3 different Egypt's spiritual captivity, when religion tried to shrink my calling, emotional bondage, when trauma tried to define my identity, and financial slavery, when scarcity tried to limit my impact. Each time I thought I was just trying to survive. But I discovered something that revolutionized my understanding of deliverance. Every time I had the courage to leave familiar captivity for unknown freedom, others found permission to start their own journey. That's the weight and the glory of what you're carrying right now. You're not just someone who got free, you're someone who shows others what freedom looks like. But Exodus requires preparation. You can't just walk out of Egypt empty-handed, and you can't carry everything from your captivity into your promised land. There are divine migration orders that must be followed, wilderness supplies that must be gathered, and Red Sea moments that demand impossible faith. Tonight, we're going to prepare you for the crossing. Not just your crossing, but the pathway you're creating for others who are watching from the shadows, wondering if escape is actually possible. Right now, I want you to think about this. What is one thing that has held you captive for years that you're finally ready to leave in Egypt? Don't just think it, speak it aloud as your Exodus declaration. This is how freedom begins, with spoken defiance against what enslaved you. Say it out loud. I am leaving behind. Did you feel that tremor in your chest? That's not fear. That's the sound of prison doors beginning to creak open. That's the first rumble of walls beginning to fall. Because here's what I've learned after walking thousands through their Exodus moment. The thing you're most afraid to leave behind is usually the very thing that's been keeping you from your promised land. Maybe it's the victim identity that kept you safe but small. Maybe it's the fear of failure that protected you from risk but also prevented you from purpose. Maybe it's the need for others' approval that gave you temporary validation but cost you your authentic voice. Whatever it is, Egypt always feels safer than Exodus. Familiar captivity always seems more reasonable than unknown freedom. But God didn't bring you this far to leave you where you are. He brought you here to lead you out. And when He does, when you finally find the courage to step away from what enslaved you, something miraculous happens. Others start believing that their freedom is possible too. This is why your transformation feels so intense, why every step forward seems to face such resistance. Hell knows what happens when someone your age, with your experience, with your tested faith, finally walks in the authority they've been commissioned to carry. Mountains move, kingdoms shake, generations are delivered. So let me ask you, are you ready to stop just surviving your circumstances and start leading others out of theirs? Are you prepared to discover that your personal exodus is actually the beginning of your generation's deliverance? Because what I'm about to show you will transform how you see every challenge you're facing. Every door that's been closed, every season of waiting you've endured. You'll understand why God had to prepare you in hidden places before revealing you in public spaces. Your Egypt season is over. Your wilderness training is complete. Your Jordan crossing is at hand. The question isn't whether God is ready to deliver you. The question is whether you're ready to become a deliverer. Because that's what the Exodus generation does. We don't just get free, we lead freedom movements. We don't just cross over, we hold the waters open for others. We don't just inherit promises, we become the pathway others walk to reach their own. Your deliverance was never just about you. It was about everyone who will follow in your footsteps. Everyone who needs to see that escape from spiritual Egypt is not only possible, it's prophetic. So gather your courage, prepare your faith, ready your obedience. The waters are about to part, the walls are about to fall, the promised land is about to open its gates, and you're not crossing alone. Welcome to the Exodus generation. Your migration orders have been issued. Your divine navigation system has been activated. It's time to lead the way home. You felt it when I said you're not crossing alone, didn't you? That shift in your chest when you realized your deliverance was designed to create a pathway for others. But what I'm about to reveal will take your breath away. You're not just part of an exodus. You're being activated as a conductor in heaven's underground railroad. Right now, as you sit in the authority of your kingdom commission, as you prepare for your Exodus crossing, there are others scattered across this nation who carry the same spiritual frequency you do. Others who've been told they're past their prime, others who've been overlooked by a youth-obsessed culture, others who carry the scent of someone who's been through fire but wasn't consumed. And God is connecting you. I've helped establish 47 spiritual safe houses across 12 states. I've watched single conversations create chains of liberation that freed hundreds. I know how heaven's communication system works because I've been operating as a station commander for over a decade. And what I've learned will revolutionize how you see every relationship, every conversation, every connection from this moment forward. You're not just finding community, you're being commissioned to build kingdom infrastructure. Think about Rahab, one prostitute living in a condemned city who made a single decision to help heaven's spies. Her house became the safe passage that preserved God's people and earned her a place in the lineage of Christ. One woman, one house, one choice, and the entire trajectory of salvation history flowed through her doorway. Your story, your home, your influence, they're meant to be someone else's safe passage. But here's what most spiritual content never teaches. Heaven's network doesn't operate like earthly community. It doesn't function through programs or committees or denominational structures. It operates through recognition. Spirit recognizing spirit, wounded healer identifying wounded healer, survivor connecting with survivor. You've felt it before, haven't you? That moment when you met someone and instantly knew they'd walked through fire, something in their eyes, something in their presence that told you without words. This one knows what it costs to keep breathing when everything inside you wants to stop. That's heaven's identification system activating. And now that your resurrection fire is burning, now that your kingdom authority is activated, that recognition system is about to go into overdrive. You're going to start drawing people who need to see what freedom looks like. Not because you advertise it, not because you promote it, but because liberty has a fragrance that captivity recognizes. Let me tell you about Margaret, 73 years old, sitting in a coffee shop in small-town Nebraska when a stranger approached her table. "Excuse me," the woman said, "but there's something about your presence that makes me feel like I can breathe again. I don't even know why I'm telling you this, but I've been thinking about ending it all." Margaret hadn't said a word about her own journey. She hadn't shared her testimony or quoted scripture, but the light of someone who'd survived their own suicide attempt was recognizing someone who needed to know that survival was possible. 3 hours later, that woman was not only choosing life, but asking Margaret how she'd found the strength to keep going. Within a week, Margaret's kitchen table had become a weekly gathering place for women who'd lost hope. Within a month, 3 other women in that small town had started their own gatherings. Margaret didn't plan to become a network conductor. She just learned to carry her resurrection fire in public spaces, and that fire became a signal that guided others home. This is how heaven's underground railroad operates. Not through massive ministries or grand strategies, but through ordinary people who've learned to let their liberation show. Right now, think of one person who needs to know that their Egypt season can end. Someone who's been enslaved to the same lie that once bound you. Someone who believes they're too old, too damaged, too far gone to start over. Speak their name aloud as your first rescue mission assignment. Did you say it good? That's your first act as a Heaven's Railroad conductor. Because here's what I need you to understand. Your story isn't just personal testimony anymore. It's intelligence in spiritual warfare. Every detail of your journey, every lesson learned in your wilderness, every victory won in your valley, it's all data that someone else needs to complete their own liberation. The depression you conquered becomes someone else's roadmap out of darkness. The betrayal you survived becomes someone else's proof that trust is possible again. The dream you resurrected becomes someone else's evidence that it's never too late to start over. But this network doesn't build itself. It requires intentional activation. It demands strategic connection. It needs conductors who understand that their freedom was never meant to be a solo victory. I want you to create what I call a prophetic safe house. Not a physical building, but a spiritual space where other wounded healers can gather, connect, and deploy together. This might be your living room, your kitchen table, a weekly phone call, or even an online group. The location doesn't matter. The intention does. Here's your safe house establishment protocol. Invite 3 people into Sacred Circle for weekly freedom check-ins. Not casual fellowship, not surface-level socializing, but deep accountability around walking in the authority you've been commissioned to carry. Each week you'll share 3 things: one area where you're advancing in your calling, one area where you're facing resistance, and one person you're praying for to find their own freedom. This isn't therapy, it's intelligence sharing among heaven's operatives. But here's where it gets powerful. Each person in your safe house is commissioned to establish their own safe house, and each person they gather is commissioned to do the same. What starts as 3 people around your table becomes a network that spans cities, states, nations. This is how the early church exploded across the Roman Empire, not through mass rallies or media campaigns, but house to house, heart to heart, one liberated life igniting another. And now, in these final days, God is reactivating this ancient strategy. He's calling together the overlooked, the mature, the battle-tested, those who've learned that His strength is perfected in weakness, and commissioning them as His end-times communication network. In the comments below, if you're ready to stop operating alone and start building kingdom infrastructure, declare with the authority of someone who's been commissioned as heaven's railroad conductor, I activate my station. This isn't social media engagement. This is spiritual warfare infrastructure. When you type those words, you're announcing to both heaven and hell that you're no longer just a survivor, you're a liberator. But here's the most powerful part of heaven's network. It operates on supernatural communication frequencies. You don't have to be in the same city, the same state, or even the same country to be connected. When one station sends out a signal, a prayer request, a prophetic word, an urgent need, it travels through the network faster than any earthly communication system. I've watched a woman in California speak a word that reached someone in New York at the exact moment they needed to hear it. I've seen a man in Texas receive revelation that answered a question being asked simultaneously by someone in Florida. I've witnessed prayer chains that spanned continents and moved mountains thousands of miles away. This isn't mysticism. This is how the body of Christ was designed to function when it operates in supernatural unity. What if your story becomes the secret signal that guides someone else home? What if the network you help build becomes the pathway God uses to awaken an entire generation? When the final harvest comes, will you be found operating alone or commanding part of heaven's communication grid? Because what I'm about to share next will show you how this sacred network becomes the launching platform for the most important assignment of your life. How your personal liberation becomes the foundation for generational transformation. How your resurrection fire becomes the beacon that lights the way for an entire movement of forgotten chosen ones to rise and reclaim their destiny. You're not just building community. You're establishing heaven's operational headquarters for the greatest spiritual awakening this generation has ever seen. Your network is your weapon system. Your connections are your command structure. Your relationships are your spiritual artillery. And the enemy is about to discover what happens when heaven's underground railroad goes fully operational. The network is activating, the signals are transmitting, the safe houses are opening. Welcome to the resistance. Your station is now online. The network is live. The signals are transmitting. And now, as we reach the sacred threshold of this hour-long journey together, something eternal is about to be sealed. You are no longer the same person who clicked on this video, the one who sat in those ashes questioning if there was anything left worth saving. That person has died. What sits here now carries resurrection fire, kingdom authority, and heaven's commission flowing through your spiritual DNA. But this moment, this exact second as our time together draws to its sacred close, this is not an ending. This is your ordination into eternal service. For nearly 60 minutes, you've allowed me into the most tender places of your heart. You've trusted me with your wounds, your dreams, your desperation, and your hope. You've stayed when others would have scrolled away. You've opened when others would have closed. You've believed when others would have doubted. That wasn't coincidence, that was divine appointment. And now, as someone who has received commissions from 3 spiritual fathers who are now with the Lord, as someone who carries their spiritual DNA along with my own, I stand before you with heaven's authority to conduct your final ordination. You see, what happened here tonight wasn't just healing. It wasn't just inspiration. It was spiritual succession. You've been inducted into a lineage that stretches back to the first disciples who heard Jesus say, "As the Father has sent me, even so I send you." Tonight, that same breath that Jesus breathed on them, I breathe over you. Place your hand on your heart one final time. Feel that rhythm, that sacred drumbeat that has carried you through every valley, every storm, every night when hope seemed to die. That heartbeat is about to become the metronome for someone else's survival. Because here's what I need you to understand as we seal this sacred hour. Your name has just been entered into heaven's eternal commission registry. Not in pencil, not as a draft, but written in the blood of the Lamb and sealed with the authority of the throne. Every scar you've honored tonight, they're now part of your spiritual credentials. Every tear you've shed, they're now rivers of healing for others. Every prayer you've whispered in darkness, they're now weapons in heaven's arsenal. This commission doesn't expire when earthly ministry ends. It doesn't fade when physical strength fails. It doesn't diminish when the world tells you to step aside. For younger voices, this is eternal appointment written in heaven's archives, effective from this moment until you stand before the throne. But commissioning requires response. Eternal assignment demands eternal agreement. Before you leave this sacred space, I need you to speak aloud the one assignment you're accepting for your remaining years on earth. Not planning covenant making with eternity. Your words are being recorded in heaven's archives. Say it now. For the rest of my days, I commit to. Did you speak it good? That declaration just activated your eternal commission. Now, as someone authorized by heaven to conduct final ordinations, I'm about to transform every action you take in the next few minutes into part of your permanent spiritual record. When you like this video, you're not just agreeing with content. You're signing your spiritual covenant with heaven, declaring, I accept my eternal assignment. That like button becomes your signature on heaven's commission documents. When you subscribe to this channel, you're not just following a creator, you're joining heaven's permanent service record, entering your name in the eternal commission registry, alongside every warrior who has ever said yes to impossible assignments. When you comment below, and I want you to declare with the authority of someone who has just been eternally commissioned, when you write, I receive my eternal commission. You're not engaging with social media. You're filing your sacred testimony in heaven's archives. That comment becomes evidence that on this night at this hour, you crossed from temporal thinking into eternal service. When you share this message, you're not just spreading content, you're exercising apostolic multiplication, using your first act of commissioned authority to call others into their eternal assignment. Every person who encounters this message through your sharing comes under the influence of your commissioning. And here's what will happen in the coming days. You'll feel that strange pull to explore more content on this channel. That's not curiosity, that's your spirit seeking prophetic intelligence gathering, studying heaven's strategic communications. Let your spirit choose your next video. Don't scroll through titles with your logic. Let your heart guide you. The video that makes your spirit skip the title that seems to speak directly to your situation. That stirring you feel is God directing you to your next commission briefing. Trust it, click it. Heaven uses mysterious ways to deliver your next breakthrough. But I need to tell you something that will shake you to your core. Tonight, you didn't just join a channel. You didn't just find content. You discovered your true spiritual family, the remnant, who refuse to bow to the lie that their season is over. Every video you watch from now on becomes part of your ongoing commission updates. Every return to this channel is you reporting for continued orders. You'll find yourself coming back not just for inspiration, but for intelligent, strategic communication from heaven's war room. And in the days ahead, when the enemy whispers that what happened here wasn't real, when doubt tries to convince you that your commission was just emotion, remember this moment. Remember the authority that settled on your shoulders. Remember the fire that ignited in your chest. Remember the sound of your own voice declaring your eternal assignment. That was your spirit recognizing truth your mind will try to forget. Let me paint you a picture of what your life looks like 1 year from now. You're walking with different authority, speaking with different confidence, carrying yourself like someone who knows they've been commissioned by heaven itself. People notice, not because you tell them about your calling, but because there's something in your presence that wasn't there before. A weightiness, a gravitas, the scent of someone who has been in the throne room and came back carrying fire. Your family sees it. Your co-workers sense it. Strangers are drawn to you because you carry the fragrance of resurrection in a world drunk on death. And in quiet moments, when you remember this night, you'll whisper a prayer of gratitude that you had the courage to stay for the full hour, that you trusted a voice that promised your ashes could become an altar, that you believed resurrection fire could burn in someone your age, with your history, with your scars. Because what if this isn't the end of your journey, but your commissioning into eternal purpose? What if every action you take from this moment becomes part of your permanent record in heaven's archives? When you stand before the throne, will your life show evidence of this commissioning? I believe it will, because I've seen what happens when someone receives their eternal assignment and has the courage to walk in it. I've watched 70-year-olds launch ministries that touch thousands. I've seen broken hearts become healing centers for the brokenhearted. I've witnessed rejected stones become cornerstones of revival. And tonight, I've witnessed your commissioning. So go now, not as someone who watched a video, but as someone who received their marching orders from eternity. Go as a carrier of resurrection fire, a keeper of hope, a living testimony that it's never too late for God to do something impossible through a surrendered life. Your commission is eternal. Your assignment is active. Your authority is heaven-backed. And this journey, this sacred hour we've shared, is just the beginning. The flame you carry now will never be extinguished. And everywhere you go, everyone you meet, every life you touch, they'll encounter the fire that was ignited in this moment. Your resurrection fire is calling others home. Answer with courage, walk with authority, burn with purpose. Your eternal commission begins now.